Chapter 202. Katie sat in front of Yang Feng and gave him a flirtatious look. "Hi, my employer, what's your name?" Although Katie's looks and temperament were far inferior to that of beauties like Jessica and Judy, but compared to ordinary girls, she was already a beauty. Moreover, she had the unique heroic spirit of mercenaries, which was quite attractive to men. Yang Feng said with a smile, "My name is Ian." Katie asked, "When do you plan to set off for the Rijek city?" "The sooner the better. Then how about we meet at the Western Gate tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock? Alright. After the discussion, Yang Feng left the small bar and stayed in the Woodward City for the night. Early the next morning, Yang Feng arrived at the Western Gate. At the Western Gate, Katie and her White Lily mercenary group were already waiting for him. In addition to Katie, the other 4 female warriors of the White Lily mercenary group were tall and burly, with solid muscles and fierce glints in their eyes. They looked more manly than men. Yang Feng looked at the 4 burly female warriors of the White Lily mercenary group and muttered inside, "The White Lily mercenary group has such a nice name." Katie smiled sweetly at Yang Feng and said, "You're early, get on the carriage." Yang Feng nodded and boarded a carriage. The carriage rental fee was naturally paid by Yang Feng. "Set off," Katie ordered, and the convoy left the Woodward City. The main road of the Woodward City hadn't been repaired and was full of potholes. Sitting in the carriage, Yang Feng felt very uncomfortable due to the jolting. Yang Feng criticized inside, "No wonder it was so difficult for people in ancient times to travel far. It's so uncomfortable to sit in a carriage. If it wasn't for my strong physique, I would have been jolted like a dog." In the Tyrandot subcontinent, Yang Feng's true body came and went either by plane or by magic carpet, which was a very comfortable and happy life. Even in the Great Cloud Dynasty, he rode a variety of advanced alchemical secret treasures and didn't feel any discomfort. Now that he came to the Feisua Plain, he deeply felt the backwardness of the Feisua Plain. "Ian, there's something up ahead." Suddenly, Katie's voice came from outside the carriage and the carriage stopped. Yang Feng creased his eyebrows slightly and alighted from the carriage. Yang Feng looked around and discovered that the convoy had arrived at a very remote place. On both sides of the road, there were 2 small hills with dense grass, very suitable for an ambush. On the hillside, one could vaguely see the silhouettes of people flashing. With a dignified expression, Katie walked up to Yang Feng and said unhurriedly, "I suspect that it's someone from the Storm Wolves mercenary group. They often kill their employers halfway and plunder their wealth. I'm afraid they've set their eyes on you. It's fine if they don't come. If they come over, I'll give them an unforgettable lesson." Yang Feng smiled coldly, silently recited an incantation, pointed at the sky, and cast magic eyes. A magic light flashed and condensed into a huge eye in midair. The eyeball rotated 360 degrees and looked at both sides of the hillside. On both sides of the hillside, there were indeed more than 20 heavily armed soldiers lying in ambush. Among those soldiers stood Lek, the head of the Storm Wolves mercenary corps. "Magician. He's a magician." The more than 20 soldiers looked at the magic eye in the sky, their complexions turning deathly pale and revealing traces of fear. On the Feisua Plain, magicians were synonymous with mystery and power. These soldiers had only heard of the powerful deeds of magicians in some myths and legends. Now that they saw the magic eye, they were shocked, scared out of their wits, and lost all will to fight. "Ian, you're actually a magician, that's really amazing. I think I might have fallen in love with you." Katie stared fixedly at Yang Feng, her eyes rippling with traces of charm, her face carrying traces of a coquettish and charming smile. She walked up to Yang Feng. Suddenly, a cold glint flashed in Katie's eyes. She pulled out a dagger with a blade flickering with a dark blue radiance and fiercely stabbed at Yang Feng. Caught off guard, Yang Feng was stabbed in the abdomen by Katie. After succeeding in her attack, Katie immediately retreated briskly by more than a dozen meters, before saying with a charming smile full of malice, "Mighty Mr. Wizard, I think I might have fallen in love with you. However, I'm not in love with you, but rather with your wealth." The magic eye in the sky collapsed in a flash. "Why?" Yang Feng covered his abdomen with both hands, his expression pained, and said while gnashing his teeth. Lek, the head of the Storm Wolves Mercenary Corps, laughed wildly, and took his subordinates down from the hillside. Idiot, that's because our Storm Wolves Mercenary Corps and the White Lily Mercenary Corps are in cahoots. A fat sheep like you is our favorite target. Lord Wizard, the romantic encounter in the bar wasn't bad, right? In fact, in the bar, the people with the best reputation are that stupid bear's mercenary corps. Apart from his mercenary corps, the rest are just hungry wolves like us. Katie interrupted, enough with the nonsense, kill him. The means of wizards are too strange and powerful, don't give him any chances. Shoot him. On the Feisua plain, bows and arrows were controlled weapons. Apart from people in the army who could equip a large number of bows and arrows, ordinary mercenaries rarely could afford to use bows and arrows. However, there were 5 archers in the Storm Wolves Mercenary Corps. Lek barked, "Fire!" The 5 archers immediately drew their bows and shot 5 arrows, as if shooting stars, towards Yang Feng. At the moment when the 5 arrows were about to hit Yang Feng, a powerful warping force field suddenly appeared and shook slightly, and the 5 arrows were strangely deflected. Seeing such a strange scene, Lek and Katie's complexions at once became extremely pale, and their eyes flashed with a touch of an unknown premonition. "You weren't stabbed," Katie said in a somewhat trembling voice. Yang Feng stood up, looked at the holes in his clothes, and said faintly, "No, I was still somewhat careless. I was stabbed by an ordinary person like you. Unfortunately, the gap in strength between us is too great, and I don't have a legend rank weapon. It's basically impossible to assassinate me." Yang Feng wore the legend rank secret treasure white elephant armor, the legend rank secret treasure heart of azure, and the legend rank defensive rings sacred light protection. Under the protection of the 3 legend rank secret treasures, only a legend rank assassin with a legend rank dagger would be able to assassinate him in an instant. Katie's complexion paled, her expression was one of remorse and sorrow, and tears streamed down from her eyes. She knelt on the ground and knelt towards Yang Feng. "I'm sorry, he forced me to do this. Lord Wizard, it was this man who forced me to do this. I beg you, spare my life. I didn't want to, he forced me to do this." Lek's eyes flashed with a touch of an ominous glint, and he bellowed, "Tooth, Chipor. Everyone, let's kill him. We have more than 20 people, no matter how strong this wizard is, we can definitely kill him." The eyes of the more than 20 mercenaries flashed with a touch of an ominous glint, and under Lek's lead, they rushed at Yang Feng. Yang Feng smiled faintly and flicked his hand, and a seed fell on the ground. With a flash of magic radiance, the seed quickly grew, extended more than 30 barbed rattans, and wrapped around the more than 20 mercenaries. The extremely sharp barbs stabbed into their bodies, making them wail in pain. Even the leader of the Storm Wolves mercenary group, Lek, was tightly entangled by the rattan within a single move and let out an incomparably mournful shriek. The complexions of Katie and the 4 female warriors of the White Lily mercenary group, who were more manly than men, were very pale, and their eyes flashed with a touch of fear. This extraordinary power was far beyond their imagination. "It would be a pity to waste such a precious elixir on you, but I'm short on manpower. I'll reluctantly use it on you." Yang Feng took out a large box of liquid metal nanorobot elixir and said somewhat regretfully. Before coming to the Feisua plain this time, Yang Feng had made sufficient preparations, bringing 30,000 vials of liquid metal nanorobot elixir. In the Tyrannid subcontinent, liquid metal nanorobot elixir was only a benefit for the upper echelons. After a vial of liquid metal nanorobot elixir was injected into one's body, one could maintain eternal youth by relying on the nanomachines. Before dying of old age, one would always look young. It was very popular among women, and was in short supply. Before Yang Feng built the first portable fortified stronghold on the Feisua plain, the 30,000 vials of liquid metal nanorobot elixir could be used up, and could not be replenished. Yang Feng said faintly, "I have some magic elixirs here. As long as you're injected with these magic elixirs, once you have the thought of betraying me, you'll self-detonate and die. Now, I'll be merciful and let you choose whether to take the elixir or not." I'll give you 10 seconds to consider. Katie promptly said, I'll take it. No, please bestow me the precious magic elixir, Honorable Lord Wizard. The 4 female warriors of the White Lily mercenary group, who were more manly than men, knelt on the ground and said respectfully, Please bestow me the precious magic elixir, Honorable Lord Wizard. I'll take it too. I beg you, let me take it. Honorable Lord Wizard, please bestow me the precious magic elixir. The warriors of the Storm Wolves mercenary group weren't fools, and they implored bitterly. Amidst their pleas, Yang Feng also injected vials of liquid metal nanorobot elixir into their bodies. After subduing the 2 mercenary groups, Yang Feng rode the carriage and continued to move towards the Rijek city. Chapter 203. The Rijek city was located at the border of the Beastman Empire, the Elven Empire, and the Human Morince Empire. It was a large city belonging to the Morince Empire. With a population of nearly 1 million, the Rijek city was very prosperous. It was the extremely sinful slave trade that supported the Rijek city's prosperous economy. The Beastman Empire, the Elven Empire, and the Morince Empire waged war all year round. The defeated would be reduced to slaves and brought to the Rijek city by slave merchants. At the same time, sinful human slave hunters often appeared in the Beastman Empire and the Elven Empire, capturing beastmen and elves for sale. The Rijek city was the largest slave trading city in the Morince Empire. The city wall is only a dozen meters tall. It's really weak. Yang Feng looked at the city wall that was only a dozen meters tall and sighed inside. In the Great Cloud Dynasty, the city walls of various cities were at least 100 meters tall and were covered with warlock towers. The defenses were extremely strict. The city wall of the Rijek city, the largest slave trading city of the Morince Empire, was only a dozen meters tall. If Yang Feng drove the Mechanical Legion, then he would be able to seize the Rijek city's city wall with a single charge. Stop. Please show me your identification. When Yang Feng and his party arrived at the gate of the Rijek city, several warriors came over. Yang Feng spread the fingers of his hand and a scorching fireball appeared in his hand. The complexions of the warriors changed and they said respectfully, So it's the Honorable Sir Wizard, we've been impolite. Please come in. A warrior promptly drove away the commoners at the gate, making way for Yang Feng and the others to enter the city. A warrior gave them a glance, then left his post and quickly walked into the city. In the Rijek city, in a luxurious room, a fat man with a pair of small eyes, yet a shrewd glint, narrowed his eyes and asked the warrior, What? You said that a wizard without a magic badge came to the Rijek city? The warrior said, That's right, Master Jim. I saw it with my own eyes. There were more than 20 mercenaries beside the mage. 5 female mercenaries and 23 male mercenaries. Jim casually tossed 3 gold coins to the soldier. Interesting, these 3 gold coins are yours. You can go. The warrior was overjoyed. He received the 3 gold coins and withdrew. Thank you very much, Master Jim. Jim's eyes narrowed and flashed with a shrewd glint. A wizard without a wizard badge. Is he a wizard who just returned after learning from a reclusive wizard? He's a good investment target. Without any hesitation, Jim immediately stood up and walked out with large strides with vigorous movements that were different from his fat body. Rijek city was much larger than Woodward city and had a much larger population. It was bustling with people coming and going, making it seem very prosperous. The streets were filled with all kinds of beast-like slaves, but most of them looked like humans. The beastmen were divided into the humanoid beastmen and the pure beast beastmen. The humanoid beastmen were beastmen who had a partial beast form, but most of them were in human form. On the other hand, pure beast orcs were all kinds of beast orcs that had evolved to have hands and feet and possessed intelligence that was not inferior to that of humans. Beastmen were beastmen of beastmen, with beastmen and beastmen. With beastmen. Beastmen were natives of the Feisua plain. Beastmen were pets brought over from other planes by the Tsangji plains human warlocks. The Beastman Empire was ruled by beastmen, and beastmen didn't have much power. In the Tyrannid subcontinent, beastmen were also called humanoids, and were distinguished from beastmen who had a human appearance. In the Tyrannid subcontinent, humanoid beastmen were instead a weak race. That was because the humanoid beastmen in the Tyrannid subcontinent were pets brought over from the Feisua plain by the ancient warlocks. Yang Feng looked at the streets full of humanoid beastmen and had a very novel feeling. Shortly after Yang Feng walked in the Reject City, Jim came to greet him with a dozen guards. Jim revealed a refreshing smile on his face and said, "Hello, Honorable Sir Wizard. I am Jim, the manager of the Reject City branch of the Rose Merchant Group. The Rose Merchant Group has the best supply in the entire Reject City. We can even get you the most sought-after fox girls among the elves and beastmen. They are definitely purebred elves and beastman foxes, and not those mixed-blood half-elves and half-blood beastmen. Would you like our services?" Purebred elves and purebred beastman foxes were the most beautiful women. Protected by the Beastman Empire and the Elven Empire, it was very difficult to get hold of them. On the other hand, half-elves, half-humans, and half-beastmen weren't protected by the Orc Empire or the Elven Empire. Many of the slave merchants in the Reject City were very black-hearted, and sold half-blood beastmen and half-blood beastmen as genuine purebred elves and purebred beastmen to make a huge profit. Yang Feng said with a light smile, "My name is Ian. I think I'll need your services." With a full set of legend rank secret treasures and the level 4 extraordinary life form rank mechanical battle beasts stored inside the dimensional badge, unless it was a demigod rank expert, no one could kill Yang Feng's embodiment. Jim said with a smile, "In that case, Honorable Sir Ian, please come with me." Yang Feng said carelessly as he walked, "Slaves need to eat and drink. Can you buy a lot of food?" Jim's plump face beamed like a flower. "You've asked the right person. The Rose Merchant Group is one of the 10 largest merchant groups in the Morin's Empire. Only we can easily buy food for hundreds or thousands of people." Yang Feng asked, "Is it transportation?" Jim said with some vigilance, "To where?" The Beastman Empire had always been short of food. Every year, they had to smuggle large amounts of food from the Morin's Empire. The Morin's Empire had always cracked down on smuggling. Jim had no choice but to be vigilant. Yang Feng said lightly, "The Red Earth Wasteland. I want to build a city in the Red Earth Wasteland." "The Red Earth Wasteland. That's no problem. What? You want to build a city in the Red Earth Wasteland?" Jim was suddenly taken aback, saying, "Sir Ian, the Red Earth Wasteland is extremely barren. It has no special products or minerals, only some dirty goblin bandits, bugbears, and other lowly races. It's of no value at all." The Red Earth Wasteland was a vast wasteland located at the junction of the Morin's Empire, the Titan Empire, the Beastman Empire, and the Elven Empire. In the wasteland, only the Rhine River ran through the entire wasteland. Apart from the vicinity of the Rhine River, the rest of the wasteland was dry and had little rain. Only some low shrubs and berries grew there. The lack of water made it a barren place, which was why it was abandoned by the 4 empires. It wasn't that no one had the idea of building the Red Earth Wasteland, but the lack of water made everyone give up. To transport water from afar to the Red Earth Wasteland was a huge project that cost a lot of money. Besides water, there was also food. The Red Earth Wasteland didn't produce food. To build a city there, it would cost a lot of money every year. Mountains of gold and seas of silver wouldn't be enough to spend on food. The most commendable thing about the Red Earth Wasteland was its superior geographical location. It could pass through and trade with the 4 empires. However, it was also bad because of its location. Although the 4 empires weren't willing to build a city in the Red Earth Wasteland, but once the city was built in the Red Earth Wasteland, it was bound to cause a huge dispute. Such a place of little value couldn't attract the attention of the powerful forces. Yang Feng said with a faint smile, "I'm rich, so I'm happy. Legend has it that wizards are some strange people. Now it seems that it's true." Jim criticized inwardly, yet he was even more respectful towards Yang Feng. A rich and willful nouveau riche like Yang Feng was definitely a favorite client of slave merchants like Jim. Katie's eyes were bloodshot and full of remorse. If she had known that Yang Feng was a rich and willful nouveau riche, she would have shown off her flirtatiousness and thrown herself at him. Jim led Yang Feng to a huge slave market. Inside the huge slave market, naked and haggard-looking beastmen, half-blood beastmen, half-blood elves, humans, and all sorts of other slaves could be seen everywhere. Many people were standing there, judging the slaves and picking the ones they liked. When Yang Feng saw this scene, his eyebrows creased slightly. He, who was born on Earth, was still slightly unaccustomed to such a scene. However, he was very rational and quickly threw the unaccustomed feeling to the back of his mind. Jim said, "Sir Ian, what kind of slaves do you want? Beauties? Warriors? Housekeepers? Or scholars, blacksmiths, and the like?" Yang Feng said, "I need warriors with high obedience and strong battle prowess." "Very well, I just got a batch of top-notch goods. You'll definitely like them." Jim gave a few instructions to one of his subordinates, then smiled and led Yang Feng inside the slave market. Jim quickly led Yang Feng to a huge cage. Inside the cage, there were more than 300 tall and sturdy humanoids with only a bull's tail and a height of 1.9 meters. Jim enthusiastically promoted to Yang Feng, "These are 318 mixed-blood ox-human half-blood beastmen. Their origins are very clean. They were captured by a slave-catching group of the Beastmen Empire and given to us. There won't be any problems if you buy them. Ox-human half-blood beastmen are honest and obedient. With a bit of training, they'll be very good half-blood beastman guards." Chapter 204. Yang Feng asked, "How much?" Jim said straightforwardly, 30 gold coins per person, 318 people, I'll count it as 9,000 gold coins." A burly oxman half-blood beastman in his 30s got up, knelt in front of Yang Feng, and implored with tears in his eyes, "Sir, if you want to buy us, then we're willing to sell us to you. I beseech you to be merciful and buy our family as well. If you can buy our family, I, Babu, swear in the name of my ancestors that I am willing to lead my clan to serve you, even to the point of death." The 317 oxmen half-blood beastmen also came over, knelt on the ground, and kowtowed to Yang Feng until their foreheads bled. Half-beastmen did not have the protection of gods, so their status was extremely low. Neither the humans nor the orcs saw them as their own kind. They hunted them wantonly and traded them like goods. Yang Feng asked, "How much for their entire family?" Jim smiled and said, "Their families are basically all old, weak, women and children. Only a few pretty virgins are worth a bit of money. If we sell them separately, we should be able to sell them for around 2,100 gold coins. If you want to buy them, Master Ian, 2,000 gold coins will do." Yang Feng said lightly, "I'll buy them all. After I'm done choosing, we'll pay together." Jim smiled and said, "Yes." Yang Feng suddenly pointed to a huge cage next to him and asked, "How much are those people?" Inside the huge cage that Yang Feng pointed at, there were 200 burly human men. He could be considered to have rich experience in Tyrannid subcontinent. With a glance, he could tell that those 200 burly men were definitely from the army. Moreover, they were the kind of elite army. However, the eyes of those 200 burly humans were lifeless and dispirited. Their spirit, energy, and vitality had already been reduced by more than half. Jim glanced at the 200 burly men and said, "Those are the most elite imperial guards of the Iman Principality." It was not long ago that the king of the Iman Principality refused the proposal of the Duke of Iser. Duke Iser used his private army to destroy the Iman Principality. These 200 human slaves were the most elite imperial guards of the Iman Principality. Their strength was not bad. The leader of the imperial guards, Clive, even had the cultivation of a sky knight. However, their do-chi had been crippled, and 3 fingers had been cut off from each of their hands. They were already a group of trash. He's only suitable to be the male pet slave of the noblewomen. He's not the powerful warrior you need. Yang Feng walked up to the 200 elite royal guards of the Iman Principality and said lightly, "My name is Ian, I am a wizard. I want to ask you, do you want to continue living as a male pet? Or do you want to be a warrior and fight for me, have the dignity of a warrior, and live as a warrior?" When they heard Yang Feng's words, a glimmer of light ignited in the eyes of the 200 human burly men in the cage. The burly human Clive raised his eyes, stared at Yang Feng and said solemnly, "Our cultivation bases have been crippled, and 3 of the fingers on each of our hands have been cut off. We can no longer hold swords. Honorable Sir Magician, what do you want us to do to fight for you?" The light in the eyes of the 200 burly men immediately dimmed. With their current strength, any ordinary person could defeat them. Yang Feng said lightly, "Although your Dou Qi has been crippled and your fingers have been cut off. However, your knowledge hasn't been taken away. I need you to train me into an army that can defeat any thief or robber in the Red Earth Wasteland. Besides, I'm a wizard. The path of magic is mysterious and unfathomable. It's not impossible for me to help you restore your Dou Qi and fingers in the future." Clive's eyes lit up. He struggled to get up and saluted Yang Feng in a knight's salute. "In that case, Sir Ian, we are willing to serve you." The 200 human knights also got up and saluted Yang Feng in a knight's salute. Their eyes flickered with a glimmer of hope. Yang Feng said, "I want all of these 200 people. Name your price." Jim's eyes narrowed slightly and he said, "Sir Ian, although their Dou Qi has been crippled, but each of them is tall and sturdy with sturdy muscles. Many noblewomen of the Morin's Empire like such male pets. If they are sold to noblewomen, each of them can be sold for more than 100 gold coins. Clive is a Sky Knight, so he can be sold for at least 3,000 gold coins. The 200 of them will be sold for 30,000 gold coins." Yang Feng said carelessly, 30,000 gold coins, no problem." Next, in the warrior slave market, Yang Feng picked and bought more than 50 slave warriors. He didn't fancy the rest of the slave warriors. Jim continued to promote, "Sir Ian, you have a distinguished status, so you should let some servants handle the daily affairs. We have a batch of maids from the imperial palace of the Iman Principality. Do you need them?" Yang Feng said, "Then let's go take a look." Under Jim's lead, Yang Feng passed through the warrior slave market and arrived at the female slave market in the rear. 1,000 gold coins, 1,100 gold coins. As soon as he walked into the female slave market, a burst of crazy screams came from inside. Men who looked like aristocrats gathered together, looked at the auction platform in the center of the female slave market, and shouted madly. Yang Feng looked at the center of the auction platform and saw a 12 or 13-year-old girl with a pair of elf-like pointed ears and a delicate and beautiful appearance. Beside the girl stood a 21 or 22-year-old woman with a delicate and beautiful appearance and a pair of elven ears. She had a youthful charm and a pair of beautiful elven ears. Jim warned, the Black Fang slave hunters went deep into the hinterland of the Elven Empire and paid a huge price to capture a pair of pure-blood elven mother and daughter. Furthermore, the daughter is still a virgin. Sir Ian, are you interested in them as well? The Elven Empire isn't to be trifled with. If you want to build a city in the Red Earth City, then once the people of the Elven Empire find out that you keep elven female slaves, their pointy ears won't let you off. My greatest weakness is that I'm kind-hearted. There's really no other way. Yang Feng said lightly, 5,000 gold coins. After hearing the offer of 5,000 gold coins, the fanatical aristocrats calmed down a little, and their gazes focused on Yang Feng. 5,000 gold coins wasn't a small sum. It was enough to purchase more than 100 robust half-blood beastmen slaves. Some ordinary half-blood beastman virgins were sold for no more than 5 to 10 gold coins. 10,000 gold coins. A young man with deep eyes, a tall stature, puffy eyes, and an appearance of excessive alcohol consumption, dressed in aristocratic attire, swept Yang Feng with a cold glance and threatened eerily, "Baron Gerald of the Abet family has taken a fancy to this pair of mother and daughter. Who wants to compete with me?" When the young man with an appearance of excessive alcohol consumption issued a threat, the aristocrats frowned and remained silent, unwilling to bid. On the auction platform, the originally smiling slave master had a bitter and helpless look on his face. Jim's complexion changed slightly, and he immediately warned, "Sir Ian, the Abet family is one of the greater aristocrats of the Morin's Empire. The patriarch of the Abet family is an earl. The family's private army is very strong. The Morin's empire was so powerful that a duke dared to brazenly dispatch his private army to wipe out another principality. The greater aristocrats of this formidable empire were terrifyingly powerful, not the slightest bit inferior to the kings of some lesser principalities. 15,000 gold coins. Yang Feng nodded slightly to Jim, then swept Baron Gerald with a glance and said with a cold smile, "This is an auction, where everything goes to the highest bidder. Baron Gerald, if you don't have the money, then shut up." A gloomy glint flashed past Baron Gerald's eyes. He swept Jim standing next to Yang Feng with a glance, his pupils constricted slightly, and he squeezed out a smile, saying, "Very well. What's your name, and which family are you from?" Yang Feng said with a faint smile, "I'm Ian, a wizard." "Wizard? There's actually a Sir Wizard here." The complexions of the aristocrats changed, and their eyes flashed with a touch of fear and respect. Baron Gerald's complexion suddenly changed as well, and he squeezed out a smile, saying, "So it's the Honorable Sir Wizard. Since you like her, then I'll let you have her." Wizards had strange and unfathomable means and were extremely powerful. Killing someone silently was like playing around. The aristocrats weren't willing to offend such a terrifying existence for no reason. When Jim saw this scene, his eyes became slightly hot. As one of the leaders of the Rose Merchant Group, he had much more money than many aristocrats. But in the eyes of the aristocrats, he was still a lowly commoner. Only a powerful wizard like Yang Feng could make those arrogant aristocrats bow their heads. No one dared to bid, and Yang Feng easily bought the pair of mother and daughter elves. Jim stepped forward to negotiate with the slave owner, and agreed to settle the bill before Yang Feng left. Then, he took Yang Feng to his slave warehouse. "Sir Ian, take a look, these are the top-notch goods from the Amon Principality. Each of them has been carefully selected, rigorously trained, and have aristocratic blood. They're basically virgins, and it wasn't easy for me to get my hands on a batch of top-notch goods. You should know how difficult it is to find such a virgin in the midst of chaos." Jim arrived in front of a cage, pointed at the huge cage, and said proudly. Yang Feng looked carefully at the cage, and saw that it wasn't as messy as the other cages. Instead, it looked very clean and didn't have a trace of stench. Instead, it was sprayed with a bit of perfume. There were some tables and chairs inside the cage, and 18 beautiful women dressed in maid attire with extraordinary temperaments sat neatly in front of the tables and chairs. It looked like a beautiful scenery. Yang Feng sighed silently. Every profession has its own master. Even slave merchants know how to package their goods. The neatly dressed maids might originally only be 7 to 8% beautiful, but after dressing like this, they looked 8 to 9% beautiful. These maids were much more pleasing to the eye than the unkempt, spiritless, and naked female slaves. Yang Feng asked, "How much for one?" 400 gold coins for one. Jim quickly added, "A virgin female slave isn't worth that much. But they come from the Amon Principality's imperial palace, have aristocratic blood, have extraordinary temperaments, and grasp a variety of service skills. Such maids are very popular with aristocrats. 400 gold coins for one is really not expensive. The cost I paid for them is extremely high, so the price can't be any lower." A tall and sexy woman with a long scar extending diagonally from the right side of her face and nearly splitting her cherry lips in half stood up, saluted Yang Feng, and said softly, "Sir, I am Lena, the head maid of these maids. May I ask if you can buy all of us? As long as you buy us, we will do everything in our power to repay your kindness in the future." Yang Feng took a look at the cage, and saw that the maids inside the cage were looking at him with longing expressions, yet none of them interjected. Clearly, Lena had a very high status among the maids. Moreover, these beautiful human maids were well trained, and were many times better than those clumsy and unruly women. I'll buy them all," Yang Feng said straightforwardly. With a flick of his wrist, an inferior magic stone appeared in his hand. "Do you accept this gem?" Jim's eyes flashed with a glint of ecstasy, and he promptly said, "This is a magic energy stone. Accept. I'll pay 500 gold coins for each magic energy stone. What do you think?" "No, 600 gold coins for each. If you can sell them in large quantities, then the price can be negotiated. Magic stones, also known as magic energy stones on the Feisua plane, were a very rare resource. At the time when the Xianxia plane's human warlocks dominated the Feisua plane, they brought nearly all of the Feisua plane's magic stones to the Xianxia plane, resulting in a shortage of magic stones on the Feisua plane. As for the Feisua plane's gods who lived high up in their divine countries, they could get their hands on magic crystals of a higher grade. Therefore, they didn't do anything about the shortage of magic stones on the Feisua plane. The life magic energy contained within magic stones was not only beneficial to the cultivation of warlocks, it was also beneficial to the cultivation of knights, wizards, druids, assassins, and many other different cultivation systems. On the Feisua plane, magic stones were a very precious cultivation resource. Yang Feng sighed in his heart. Planar trade, the profits are nearly 10,000-fold. No wonder that Xianxia plane's human warlocks are so keen on exploring other planes. In the Great Cloud Dynasty, an inferior magic stone was only worth 1 silver coin, while on the Feisua plane, an inferior magic stone could be exchanged for more than 600 gold coins. Transporting inferior magic stones to the Feisua plane, and then bringing gold to the Xianxia plane, the profits were tens of thousands of times. Chapter 205. Of course, the profits of planar trade were terrifying, but the costs and risks were also astonishing. A planar passageway leading to a different plane not only required magic crystals in the hundreds of millions, but also required all kinds of precious resources. Only powerful warlocks at the Moonlight Warlock rank or above could establish a planar passageway. In the era of the 8 great warlock dynasties, planar passageways ran through countless planes, transporting troops through those planar passageways and suppressing many planes. After the 8th warlock dynasty, the major planes revolted and destroyed their planar passageways leading to the Xianxia plane. Once those planar passageways were discovered, they would face the risk of being destroyed. The planar passageways controlled by the major forces like the demon-fighting sect naturally wouldn't be used for such a trivial matter as magic stone smuggling. Yang Feng said in an overbearing manner, "I'll use these magic energy stones to pay the bill." "How many magic energy stones are there in total? Give me a number." In order to quickly establish a foothold on the Feisua plane, Yang Feng brought 2 billion inferior magic stones and 3 billion gold coins. A trifling few inferior magic stones were nothing to him. Jim said in a forthright manner, "Forthright, Sir Ian, you're really forthright. How about this? I'll calculate the price of a magic energy stone at 700 gold coins. The slaves you've purchased will cost you 72,365 gold coins. I'll erase the change and calculate it as 70,000 gold coins. You only need to pay me 100 magic energy stones." Yang Feng smiled faintly. Without saying much, he tossed a pouch containing 100 inferior magic stones into Jim's hand. In fact, on the Feisua plane, an inferior magic stone was generally sold for more than 800 gold coins. If transported to some prosperous places and sold to major forces, it could even be sold for more than 1,000 gold coins. However, Jim did his best to curry favor with Yang Feng in order to make money. Yang Feng naturally wouldn't haggle over it. If you don't give them some benefits, who will work hard for you? Jim beamed with joy and hurriedly grabbed the pouch. He had earned at least 50,000 gold coins from this transaction. Besides, selling magic stones would not only make him a fortune, but would also help him expand his network. Every wizard is a walking treasure trove with the wealth of a state. This sentence couldn't be more correct. Jim shook the pouch in his hand. Listening to the sound of magic stones striking each other, his fat eyes narrowed, and he revealed a gratified smile. He rejoiced at his wise decision. Yang Feng said meaningfully, "Help me prepare 3 months' worth of food for 1,000 people, as well as the clothes, armor, and weapons needed by my slaves. As long as you do a good job, I'll even pay with magic energy stones." Jim became excited. His eyes seemed to have turned into the shape of magic stones, and he jumped up and said, Sir Ian, I will definitely arrange everything properly for you." Jim's influence in the Rijek city was indeed enormous. He quickly got a large courtyard and stuffed all the slaves bought by Yang Feng into it. Without demur, Yang Feng spent 50 magic stones to buy the courtyard that could accommodate more than 1,000 people. The slave trade in Rijek city was very prosperous. Those who bought slaves also needed a place for the slaves to live. Only then would they have large courtyards similar to prisons and cages. In a spacious room in the courtyard, Yang Feng was sitting on a big chair. In front of him stood 3 people, namely Babu, Clive, and Lena. Yang Feng opened a box, revealing 3 vials of liquid metal nanorobot elixir inside. He said lightly, "I'm a wizard, now it's time to prove your loyalty." There were 3 magic potions in the box. "I will inject them into your bodies. This way, if I die, you will die with me. If you have any thoughts of betrayal, this magic potion will also kill you. Pick them up." A person's heart was hard to fathom. Yang Feng didn't think that he had such great charisma to make these 3 slaves desperately follow him. In fact, it was not uncommon for slaves to turn on their owners in the Morin's Empire, so the price of slaves was not as high as people thought. "Yes, Master." Lena picked up a vial of liquid metal nano-robot elixir without hesitation. When her hand touched the vial of liquid metal nano-robot elixir flew up and pricked her jade white arm, injecting the colorless liquid metal nano-robot elixir into her body. When Babu and Clive saw this, without hesitation, they stepped forward and touched the vial of liquid metal nano-robot elixir. The 2 vials of elixir flew up, pierced their arms, and injected the elixir into their bodies. "Very good, I'm glad that you didn't make the wrong choice. Now, it's time to witness a miracle." Yang Feng smiled and snapped his fingers. Lena suddenly felt the scar on her face itch slightly, and countless heat surged. The extremely ugly scar seemed to be torn off inch by an invisible hand, revealing the snow-white and tender skin underneath. Without the extremely ugly scar, Lena suddenly changed from an ugly woman who would give people nightmares to a top beauty with a sexy figure and extraordinary temperament. Babu said in a low and muffled voice, "Your scar is gone." Lena was slightly startled and somewhat incredulous. "The scar is gone?" Yang Feng flicked his finger, and a mage hand grabbed a mirror and appeared in front of Lena at once. Lena looked at the pretty face in the mirror that she had personally destroyed restored to its original appearance. She was pleasantly surprised and full of complicated feelings. Is this the power of a wizard? It's amazing! When Clive saw this, his heart was filled with shock. Almost at the next moment, his hands heated up, and he felt a numbing itch where his fingers were broken. Finger bones with flesh and blood grew out in an extremely strange manner. Then, countless flesh and blood quickly covered his fingers, condensing into 6 new fingers. After the new fingers finished growing, Clive only felt a sharp pain in his body. The destroyed meridians linked up one by one, and countless hidden apertures were stimulated. His formidable life force was stimulated, and tyrannical chi gushed out in a flash. "Thank you, Master, for repairing my body and restoring my chi. Clive is willing to do everything in his power to serve you, Master." Clive's mood surged. He knelt in front of Yang Feng and performed a knight's salute of loyalty to his lord, his voice full of passion. When Clive chose to rely on Yang Feng, he was only forced by the circumstances. There was no worse choice than to rely on Yang Feng. Now, he was truly convinced by Yang Feng. Using both kindness and power was the only way to rule. Babu suddenly felt his body heat up, and his life force potential was stimulated. A tyrannical chi gushed out of his body, directly promoting him to a knight rank expert. Oxman half-blood beastman like Babu had a very good physique and was extremely suitable for cultivating chi. However, more than 90% of half-blood beastman tribes didn't have methods to cultivate chi. Only then did the liquid metal nanorobots stimulate his life force, allowing him to break through the barrier and promote to a knight rank expert. "I, Babu, have chi as well. Master, you're really remarkable." Babu is convinced. Babu had a look of ecstasy on his face as he prostrated on the ground and said. Lena also saluted Yang Feng and said, "Thank you, Master, for repairing my body and appearance." Lena is willing to do everything in her power to serve you, Master, and take care of your daily life. After seeing Yang Feng's unfathomable means, the three people were finally convinced. Yang Feng quickly made a series of arrangements, making Lena the manager of internal affairs. Babo became the leader of the 300 Oxman half-blood beastmen. Clive, on the other hand, became the leader of the human slave warriors and commanded them. Under Clive's pleading, Yang Feng injected the 200 most elite royal guards of the Aman Principality with the liquid metal nano-robot elixir, restoring their strength and repairing their limbs. The 200 most elite imperial guards of the Aman Principality were all knight rank powerhouses. There were even more than 30 great knight rank powerhouses and 2 earth knight rank powerhouses. Their strength was extremely extraordinary. It should be noted that the leaders of the 2 mercenary groups, Lek and Katie, only possessed the strength of advanced warriors. The 200 Iman Principality's royal guards became Yang Feng's strongest force. In the center of Reject City, there was a magnificent group of huge shrines that made people feel admiration at first sight. The huge temple complex enshrined the gods of the Xalia divine system. Not far from the temple enshrined the gods of the Xalia divine system, there was a temple that, although still magnificent, was a bit smaller. That was the temple of the weave goddess Gargerstave. The Xalia divine system and the Titan divine system were the 2 major human divine systems of the Feisua plane. The Morin's Empire and the Titan Empire respectively enshrined the gods of the Xalia divine system and the Titan divine system. The gods of the Xalia divine system were the protectors of the Morin's Empire. The gods of the Titan divine system, on the other hand, were the protectors of the Titan Empire. In addition to the Xalia divine system and the Titan divine system, there were also some gods of neutral divine systems and some independent gods with very few believers. Among the many neutral gods, the weave goddess Gargerstave was definitely one of the most powerful. Virtually all wizards of the Feisua plane who practiced magic were believers of the weave goddess Gargerstave. She created the weave and cast spells with the help of the power of the weave. Even a powerful divine system like the Xalia divine system had no choice but to tolerate the weave goddess Gargerstave preaching within its sphere of influence. Of course, the size of the temple couldn't surpass that of the Xalia divine system's gods. Chapter 206. When Yang Feng arrived in front of the temple of the weave goddess Gargerstave, he carefully looked at the temple, lowered his head slightly, and stepped inside. A young priest walked up to Yang Feng and said with a smile, "Dear sir, hello. What can I do for you?" "I am a wizard who obtained the magic notes of a reclusive wizard and achieved success in my cultivation. I have always been a believer of the great weave goddess Gargerstave in the mountain forest. This is my sincerity to the goddess, please accept it." With the look of a devout believer, Yang Feng handed a bag of gold coins to the young priest. Gods didn't need gold, but secular churches didn't lack gold. After the young priest received the bag of gold coins, he weighed it in his hand and keenly felt that there were more than 100 gold coins in the bag. His smile became more enthusiastic. "The great goddess will definitely bless you." Yang Feng said, "I hope to be able to pray to the great goddess in the temple. Please come with me." The priest naturally wouldn't refuse a believer's prayer request. When Yang Feng came to the prayer room, he quietly activated the invisible crown of blasphemy that he had already put on his head. "Great Lord Gargerstave, you are the ruler of the weave, the goddess of magic." In front of the statue of the goddess, Yang Feng bowed his head and recited a prayer. Extremely devout spirit fluctuations diffused from Yang Feng. The statue of the weave goddess Gargerstave surged with divine light, and a ray of divine light shot out of her lily-white hand and shone on Yang Feng. The priest was dumbstruck, unable to believe his eyes. Divine grace. A fanatic, he's actually a fanatic. On the Feisua plane, everyone had to have faith and believe in a certain god. Believers were divided into 6 classes: non-believers, pseudo-believers, shallow believers, true believers, fanatics, and saints. The vast majority of people were pseudo-believers or shallow believers. The number of true believers and fanatics was very small. Only the talents cultivated by churches would have a large proportion of true believers and fanatics. A true believer was enough to serve as a priest in a church. Although wizards believed in the weave goddess Gargerstave, but many of them still pursued knowledge and truth. Most mages were false believers and shallow believers. There were very few true worshippers, and even fewer true worshippers who had been blessed by goddess Gargerstave of the weave. The great goddess of the weave, Gargerstave, has boundless divine power. Even the magicians in the forest are affected by her great divine power. This was a miracle, a blessing from God. This man is destined to be an amazing man in the future. A middle-aged man dressed in a bishop's robe walked out from one side of the temple, looked at Yang Feng shrouded in divine light with a complicated look in his eyes, and sighed. After Yang Feng finished praying, the divine light shrouding him also dissipated. The bishop came to Yang Feng and said, "Hello, young man, my name is Edo, the bishop of this temple. Did God guide you to our temple?" Yang Feng said respectfully with a pious expression, "Yes. Dear Bishop Edo, my name is Ian. I was summoned by the great goddess of the weave Gargerstave to come here to buy slaves and go to the Red Earth wasteland to build a city and spread the glory of the great goddess of the weave Gargerstave. On the one hand, I came here to pray to the great goddess. On the other hand, I applied for an examination of my magic strength. On the other hand, I hope that the temple can send a bishop to the Red Earth wasteland to build a temple belonging to the great goddess and spread the divine light of the great goddess. On the Feisua plain, every city had to have a temple. Just like in the Great Cloud Dynasty, every city had to have a warlock tower. Without a temple, not only would a city not receive the protection of the temple's divine power, but it would also be regarded as a heretic and subject to the crusade of all nearby forces. If Yang Feng wanted to build a city in the Red Earth wasteland, then he had to have a temple. After careful consideration, he still chose the neutral goddess of the weave, Gargerstave. As a wizard on the Feisua plain, it was normal for him to be close to the goddess of the weave. When he heard Yang Feng's request, Edo's face revealed an embarrassed expression. The Red Earth wasteland was a barren wasteland without any resources. There were only dirty and ugly goblins, bugbears, ogres, and such bandits. No priest or bishop would go there to preach. Although the goddess of the weave didn't restrict the races of her believers, but beastmen, elves, and other races that could grasp magic power had their own gods. For the goddess of the weave, goblins and bugbears, who didn't understand magic, had no value in preaching. Edo said, "Ian, from the light of divine grace bestowed upon you by the great goddess, I have confirmed that you are a great wizard. I'll give you the magic badge in a moment." When the young priest heard this, a look of envy appeared in his eyes. On the Feisua plain, the ranks of wizards were divided into Level 3 Apprentice Wizard, Wizard, Level 1 Warlock, Great Wizard, Level 2 Warlock, Archwizard, Level 3 Warlock, Legend Wizard, Great Warlock, and Demigod Wizard, Starry Sky Warlock. Great wizards were already extremely powerful beings. Bishop Edo, the bishop of the Weave Goddess's temple, only had the cultivation base of a great wizard. The young priest's cultivation base was only that of an apprentice wizard. Edo suddenly asked, "As for the temple in the Red Earth wasteland, Ian, are you willing to join the Weave Divine Order, become a member of the Weave Divine Order, and dedicate everything to spreading the glory of the great Weave Goddess Gargerstave?" Yang Feng said with a pious expression of a martyr, "I am willing to join the Weave Divine Order and dedicate everything to spreading the glory of the great Weave Goddess Gargerstave." Edo was very satisfied with Yang Feng's performance, not having the slightest doubt. Only fanatics, who were second only to saints, would go to a remote place like the Red Earth wasteland to build a city and preach at all costs. Edo said, "I'll report your situation to the headquarters. After receiving a reply from the headquarters, I'll preside over the induction ceremony for you." Yang Feng said somewhat awkwardly, "Bishop Edo, I'm leaving for the Red Earth wasteland tomorrow to build a city and spread the glory of the goddess. There are still 6 months before winter. I might not have the time to come back." Edo said, "It doesn't matter. I now grant you the title of acting bishop. You can build the temple of the goddess in the Red Earth wasteland. As for the materials and blueprints for the construction of the temple, I'll send someone to deliver them to you after you've built the city. Yang Feng revealed his true purpose. The Red Earth wasteland is very dangerous. I hope to buy some magic scrolls, divine spell scrolls, and holy water for self-defense. The Weave goddess Gargerstave was a god worshipped by countless wizards on this plane. The Weave temple had the largest number of magic scrolls and divine spell scrolls. Yang Feng's strength as a level 2 warlock was already extremely tyrannical. But on the Feisua plane, no amount of preparation was excessive. Although his strength was extremely formidable, but his spirit force was limited after all. Those magic scrolls were very useful in enhancing his fighting prowess. The holy water in the temple also had the miraculous power to purify evil, strengthen one's constitution, and treat some common ailments and pains. On the Feisua plane, the holy water in the temple was equivalent to an all-purpose medicine. Of course, the holy water could only treat many ailments and pains. Those serious ailments still needed to be treated by a doctor. Edo said, 50 gold coins for level 0 magic scrolls, 3,000 gold coins for level 1 magic scrolls, 50 gold coins for level 0 magic scrolls, and 2,000 gold coins for level 1 magic scrolls. 1,000 gold coins for 1 liter of holy water. How much do you want? Yang Feng said overbearingly, I want as much as you have. Edo was startled and said, I have 300 magic scrolls for level 0 magic scrolls and 27 magic scrolls for level 1 magic scrolls. 400 magic scrolls, 100 magic scrolls, and 20 liters of holy water, that's a total of 336,000 gold coins. Yang Feng smiled slightly, flipped his hand, and a magic stone appeared in his hand. Can I pay with magic energy stones? Edo showed a trace of a smile and said, yes. For each magic energy stone, I can offset the payment of 600 gold coins. Yang Feng said, I also need a lot of food and weapons, preferably standard military weapons. Of course, money is not an issue. Edo's eyebrows creased slightly. Military standard weapons were controlled goods and were not allowed to be bought and sold by civilians. If one didn't have the means, it would be extremely difficult to get their hands on them. Edo pondered for a while before saying, no problem, but it will take 2 to 3 months before I can come across this place. The Weave Divine Order was one of the most powerful churches on the Feisua plane. Even in the Morin's Empire controlled by the Xalia divine system, it still had a huge hidden force. If it was an ordinary person, Edo would never care about such a matter. Even if he was given more gold coins, he still wouldn't care about it. However, Yang Feng's embodiment of Ian was going to the Red Earth wasteland to spread the faith and glory of the Weave goddess Gargerstave. This had to be taken seriously. Yang Feng showed a trace of a smile after the negotiations were concluded. Food and weapons were the foundation of a force. He didn't want his lifeline to be controlled by a force. Although Yang Feng had his own ideas and plans regarding food and weapons, but in the initial stage, they had to be imported in large quantities. Yang Feng's embodiment had black dragon blood meridians and integrated 3 divinities. If he wanted to walk the warlock path, his evolution potential was limited. However, there was no problem in walking the path of gathering faith and becoming a god. Establishing a force, gathering believers, igniting godfire and ascending to godhood, this was what Yang Feng had decided to do before entering the Feisua plane. After the negotiations were concluded, Yang Feng bought a lot of research materials on wizards from the Weave Divine Order, and then left. Chapter 207. When Yang Feng returned to his bedroom, he saw 2 women sitting next to his bed, one big and one small. The big one was beautiful and moving, while the small one was delicate and lovely, very pleasing to the eye. They were the pure-blood elven mother-daughter flowers he bought from the slave market. When she saw Yang Feng enter the room, the extremely beautiful young elven woman got up and blocked in front of her daughter. She looked at Yang Feng very vigilantly, her beautiful eyes brimming with fear. There was practically no difference in what human aristocrats wanted to do when buying beautiful female elves. Yang Feng asked, "What are your names?" The female elf gave Yang Feng an elven salute and pleaded pitifully, "My name is Nancy, this is my daughter Nanny. Respected Sir Wizard, I can obey any of your orders. Please let my daughter out, okay?" Elves had always been proud and looked down on humans. But for the sake of her daughter, the always prideful Nancy had no choice but to lower her proud head. Yang Feng revealed a trace of curiosity and asked, "Was your daughter Nanny born from the elven mother tree, or was she born from your union with other male elves?" The ancestors of the Feisua Plains pureblood elves were high elves of other planes. They were the annihilation troops sent by high elves to the Feisua Plain to deal with the dark elves who had betrayed them and the goddess Lolth who had seduced the dark elves into corruption. After the annihilation troops came to the Feisua Plain, they originally wanted to deal with the dark elves and the fallen goddess Lolth as soon as possible. However, Lolth was very cunning. She immediately sought refuge with the human warlock dynasty and obtained the protection of the human warlock dynasty's experts. As a result, the matter was left unsettled. After a long time, the experts of the annihilation troops sent by high elves had their thoughts mutate. They chose to ignite their divine fire on the Feisua Plane and ascend to godhood, establishing the Feisua Plane's elven divine system. These pureblood elves were the descendants of high elves. They had long lifespans, formidable martial arts and magic talents, and were natural archers. They also had the sole weakness of high elves, that was, their very low fertility. This was a very common weakness of all powerful life forms. The way dark elves overcame this weakness was to degenerate and promiscuous, marrying with all kinds of strange species. At the same time, they would capture male life forms of various races, mate with them, and give birth to offspring. Although this method maintained the continuation of their race, it also caused their elven bloodline to be gradually eroded by various chaotic bloodlines, giving birth to countless monsters. Pure-blooded elves were very devoted to love. Basically, once a pair of lovers confirmed their relationship, they would be faithful to one person until the end. Even if their lover died, they would never look for another lover. However, because the pure-blooded elves were constantly fighting with their enemies, the male elves had suffered heavy casualties, and the proportion of the elves had been decreasing year after year. The number of elves that could reproduce naturally was dwindling. The elven mother tree was a precious treasure that the pure-blood elves possessed. Once the pure-blood elves wanted to have children, they could extract half of their blood essence and have it absorbed by the elven mother tree through a secret method. About 4 months later, the elven mother tree would bear a fruit, from which a newborn pure-blooded elf would be born. The elven mother tree was one of the most precious treasures of the Elven Empire. It was the foundation of the race's reproduction, and it was placed in the elven royal court. Only pure-blooded elves in need could go to the royal court and ask for a child. Of course, by paying half of their blood essence, the elves' vitality would be damaged, and they might not be able to recover even after a dozen years. Therefore, there weren't many pure-blooded elves who were particularly fond of children, or there were mandatory orders from the Elven Empire to ask for children from the elven mother tree. Nancy's pretty face was dyed with a faint blush, making her look even more delicate and charming. She said softly, "Respected Sir Wizard, I am amazed by your profound knowledge. Nanny is the child I wanted from the elven mother tree. Therefore I am still a virgin. Sir, please let my child go. I am willing to obey your orders." Yang Feng said with a light smile, "I think you misunderstood. I bought you mother and daughter only out of sympathy. I have no intention of doing anything to you. In the future, if you want to return to the Elven Empire, I can personally send you back." The Red Earth Wasteland was currently a barren desert, only a place of little value to goblins and bandits. However, Yang Feng was confident that he could establish it as a prosperous place. At that time, the attitude of the 4 empires would be very important. Befriending the Elven Empire was also one of Yang Feng's goals. The Elven Empire had never had a favorable impression of humans. Nancy and her daughter might be the key factor for Yang Feng to open a gap in contact with the elves. Only then did he buy the mother and daughter. Of course, the fact that they were more pleasing to the eye was also an important factor. Nancy heaved a light sigh of relief. A touch of disbelief flashed past the abyss of her eyes, yet she still said with a smile, Thank you very much. Respected Sir Wizard. Nanny, the little lowly who might be several times older than Yang Feng, hid behind her mother and looked at Yang Feng timidly, looking extremely cute. Yang Feng said, "You can freely walk around here. However, I want to warn you. The people outside aren't as kind as I am. If you leave here, it's very likely that you'll meet with misfortune. For your own safety and your daughter's, please be careful." Nancy said, "Yes. Sir, we understand." Yang Feng said, "All right, you can go back." Nancy quickly took her daughter Nanny's little hand and left Yang Feng's room. Yang Feng took out the magic data he obtained from the Weave Holy Order and began to scan it. This magic data is of no value at all. It's just a pile of trash. After a while, Yang Feng somewhat disappointedly threw the magic materials aside and sighed somewhat disappointedly. The Feisua plane had a huge weave created by the weave goddess Gargerstave that covered the entire plane. The cultivation methods of the Feisua plane's wizards were called meditation methods. By practicing a variety of meditation methods, they could improve their spirit force. Many of the Feisua plane's wizards had extremely powerful spirit force, yet their fleshly bodies were very frail, not even comparable to that of ordinary people. Moreover, the Feisua plane's wizards were limited by the weave, and the number of spell slots they could fight each day was limited. The day before, wizards had to choose spell slots, meditate, communicate with the weave, and inject their spirit force into the weave according to the spell model. The next day, they could use the spells they memorized on the first day to fight. After every day, the Feisua plane's wizards would forget the spell models they memorized the day before. They had to memorize the spell models anew and inject them into the weave. Under this repeated torment, the number of wizards on the Feisua plane became very small. As for powerhouses that could become arch-wizards and legend wizards, they were even fewer. Each shrine had different divine spells and blessings according to the divine title and power of the gods. The Weave Holy Order had its own unique divine spells. Level 0 divine spells didn't forget the spells of the day before, Level 1 divine spells didn't forget the spells of the day before, and Level 2 divine spells didn't forget the spells of the day before. With the Weave Holy Order's priests following them, the fighting strength of a wizard could be greatly enhanced. Moreover, the Weave Holy Order also had a divine grace that Feisua plane's wizards coveted the most. It was to never forget the spells they memorized. For this divine grace, countless powerful wizards had become the Weave Holy Order's hired thugs and lackeys. The Weave Holy Order was the church with the largest number of wizards on the Feisua plane. In Yang Feng's view, the spell models of the Weave Holy Order were castrated versions. These spell models couldn't be solidified in his spirit sea and were worthless. Yang Feng quickly reacted. He picked up the magic materials that he had thrown aside. That's not right, even if it's trash, it also has its own use. These magic materials are pretty good for nurturing some apprentice wizards or wizards. If the warlock cultivation knowledge Yang Feng learned in the Tyrannid subcontinent was disseminated on the Feisua plane, it would definitely attract countless people. Even many magicians would probably change their allegiance to him and practice the warlock path. However, Yang Feng didn't dare to publicly disseminate warlock cultivation knowledge. The weave goddess Gargerstave had spent countless efforts and tremendous divine power to build such a weave in order to dominate the wizards of the Feisua plane. Once Yang Feng publicly disseminated warlock cultivation knowledge, he would be cutting off the foundation of the weave faith and offending the strong divine power weave goddess. With such a deep hatred, the weave goddess Gargerstave wouldn't mind personally descending and blasting Yang Feng to pieces. Before long, the news that a wizard was about to build a city in the Red Earth wasteland spread in the Rijek city. After hearing the news, the merchants of the Rijek city were shocked. Then, they fell into ecstasy and frantically inquired about the wizard. Every official wizard was a moving humanoid treasure trove. This was a truth recognized by everyone on the Feisua plane. As long as a wizard leaked something, it would be enough for many merchants to eat for several years. After Jim heard the news, his complexion changed greatly, and he immediately mobilized his forces in the Rijek city in an attempt to snuff out the news. At the same time, he released a lot of true and false rumors in an attempt to confuse the public and cover up the truth. Jim's method was extremely effective. Many merchants fell into confusion when faced with the true and false rumors. At this moment, the Weave Holy Order's Bishop Edo came forward and announced that the Weave Holy Order's believer, Great Wizard Ian, intended to go to the Red Earth Wasteland to build a city in order to spread the glory and faith of the Weave Goddess. Chapter 208. Although Bishop Edo's status in the Reject City couldn't compare to that of the Xalia Divine System's bishops, but he was definitely a respected bigwig with unfathomable strength. When such a bigwig publicly announced that a wizard was going to build a city in the Red Earth Wasteland, it immediately caused a huge sensation. The Reject City's merchant forces immediately went crazy. The materials needed to build a city were absolutely astronomical. In particular, in a place as poor as the Red Earth Wasteland, where there was nothing, even transporting drinking water would cost a huge amount of gold coins. The Reject City's merchants, like wolves that smelled meat, scurried around and inquired about information. Jim couldn't suppress it no matter how hard he tried. He could only sigh helplessly and give up on the idea of monopolizing it. The merchants in the Reject City desperately inquired and paid a huge price. Finally, they found out from Bishop Edo that the Great Wizard Ian would hold an investment fair in the Reject's Grand Hotel 3 days later. At present, only some large merchant groups had received invitations. The small and medium-sized merchants in the Reject City began to desperately search for invitations to enter the investment fair. The large merchant groups sent people to frantically search for invitations in the trash. They regarded the invitations sent by Yang Feng as a scam and threw them into the trash. 3 days later, a luxurious carriage stopped outside the Reject's Grand Hotel from time to time. Then, a man dressed in luxurious clothing alighted from the luxurious carriage and entered the hotel. A luxurious carriage stopped at the entrance of the hotel, and Jim's somewhat fat body squeezed out of the carriage. He alighted from the carriage, glanced at the luxurious carriage parked near the hotel, and sighed in annoyance. As if his parents had died, he had a sullen expression on his face. "Isn't this our Jim? What, you're here as well? Didn't you tell me that this is just a lowly and ugly scam? I remember that you also said that no fool would go to a place like the Red Earth Wasteland to build a city." A middle-aged man with short blue hair and a well-groomed mustache in luxurious clothing walked over. His eyes were filled with anger as he coldly mocked. It was precisely because of Jim's words that he directly threw the invitation letter that Yang Feng sent to him into the trash. Afterwards, he had no choice but to rummage through the trash to look for it. After spending a lot of effort, he finally found it. Naturally, he was endlessly angry with Jim. Jim put on a long face and said as if he didn't know anything, "Randy, I also made a mistake. Who would have thought that someone would really build a city in the middle of nowhere like the Red Earth Wasteland? If it wasn't for Bishop Edo, I wouldn't have believed that someone would build a city there. Don't you think so too?" Randy sneered. "Hee, I heard that a few days ago, you accompanied a mage to the slave market to shop and earned a fortune. He even managed to get his hands on some good stuff like mana stones. Are you still saying you don't know?" Jim said without batting an eyelid, "I'll sell you 50 magic crystals for 800 gold coins each. Then let's join forces and give those little guys who are trying to disrupt order a lesson. How about it?" Randy weighed the pros and cons, and then revealed a smile. "All right." Since it had come to this, there was no point in Randy continuing to pester him. Jim had already made it up to him. He didn't mind joining forces with Jim to suppress those small and medium-sized merchant groups. Once he entered the tavern, Jim saw the leaders of the Reject City's merchant groups of all sizes, and his eyebrows couldn't help but sink slightly. On a dais in the center of the tavern, Yang Feng slowly walked onto the dais. Shortly after, gazes from below focused on him. Yang Feng said with a slight smile, "I'm very glad that everyone is here. I'm Ian, the wizard who's about to build a city in the Red Earth Wasteland." Yang Feng said with a faint smile, "To build a city in the Red Earth Wasteland, I need a lot of supplies. Water, food, weapons, clothes, all kinds of supplies. I invited you here to make you rich. I'll set a bottom line here. Each of you must guarantee at least a 40% profit, otherwise, you're not allowed to participate in the bidding. Suddenly, a burst of warm applause sounded in the tavern's venue. The eyes of the leaders of the merchant groups turned red. It was the first time that they saw a fat sheep being ripped off. Jim, who originally planned to lower the price and force the leaders of the merchant groups to withdraw, was stimulated by Yang Feng's bait. His whole body heated up and his eyes turned bloodshot. Yang Feng said with a smile, "However, the thing that the new city lacks the most is population. I need a lot of slaves, preferably human slaves. Every month, the merchant group that brings me more human slaves will be able to get a bigger share of the profits. Of course, I'm also willing to buy those slaves at a high price." A leader of a merchant group stood up and said loudly, "Sir Ian, I'm willing to personally gift you 20 female slaves. Every month, I guarantee to deliver at least 100 human slaves to you." Yang Feng said with a beaming smile, "What's your name?" The leader of the merchant group straightened his body and said loudly, "My name is Sam." Yang Feng said with a smile, "What kind of business do you want to do?" Sam said, "I want to do a clothing business." Yang Feng said straightforwardly, "Very well, as long as you can supply us, then as long as there's no problem with the quality and it meets our requirements. Then our clothing will be provided by you in the future." Sam said excitedly, "Thank you, sir." At present, Yang Feng already had hundreds of slaves in his hands. Before long, the number might exceed 1,000. Those slaves plus the clothing of everyone in the new city would definitely be a big deal. Moreover, the 100 slaves that Sam sold could also earn a huge amount of money from Yang Feng's hands. Going back and forth, Sam would obtain a huge profit. Yang Feng said, "As a reward, I'll pay you with magic energy stones." Sam said excitedly, "Thank you, sir." "Sir Ian, I'm willing to personally gift you 10 female slaves. Every month, 80 slaves can be shipped to the new city." Below, all of the merchant group leaders became excited and excitedly called out their bids. Jim and Randy were also forced to join the bidding spree. Amid the cheers of the leaders of the merchant groups, Yang Feng signed a contract with them under the witness of the God of Contracts priests. Once the contract was signed under the witness of the God of Contracts, it would take effect. If the contract was violated, one would suffer a backlash from divine power. He really has the ability to summon clouds and rain with a flip of his hand. Jim looked at the leaders of the merchant groups scrambling to sign a contract with Yang Feng and heaved a long sigh. Complicated feelings welled up inside him. Originally, Jim had planned to use his influence in the Reject City to play some tricks and have Yang Feng rely on him more. It would be best if he could monopolize all the construction materials in the Red Earth wasteland. But now, the leaders of the merchant groups were scrambling to serve Yang Feng and sign a contract with him. This completely shattered his fantasies. In the back garden of a villa in the Reject City, Baron Gerald held a glass of red wine in his hand. With a gloomy expression, he slowly swirled the glass of wine in his hand. A handsome man sitting in front of Baron Gerald said with a chuckle, "Gerald, I heard that Master Ian is going to the Red Earth wasteland to build a city. He's a big fat sheep. Don't you want to get rid of him and take revenge?" Gerald said with a cold smile, "Ards, you don't have to provoke me. He's a great wizard. I don't want to be killed by a great wizard. There are a lot of ways to kill people with magic." Ardace said with a sneer, "That's right. We have no chance of winning in a head-on confrontation with a great wizard. We'll be killed by his strange magic in a single confrontation. However, although a great wizard's magic is formidable, but the number of spell slots he can memorize in a day is limited. 8 level 2 spells, 24 level 1 spells, and 108 level 0 cantrips. This is the number of spells that a great wizard can cast in a day. As long as that person consumes his spells, he'll be like a toothless tiger, vulnerable to a single blow." Gerald pondered for a moment, then shook his head slightly and said, "His spell slots are enough to destroy an army of 100 people. Our private troops will collapse under his spells." Although Gerald had a lot of private troops under his command, but after a certain number of deaths, his private troops would also collapse. Although he coveted the wealth of a great wizard, But Gerald was still very rational. He knew that a great wizard wasn't easy to deal with. The 2,000 private troops under his command were the family's precious wealth, and they might not be able to kill a great wizard. Ardes said in a low voice, "We can spread the news and let the people of the Elven Empire and the Beastman Empire do it." Gerald's eyes lit up and said, "That's right, he bought that pair of mother and daughter elves. As long as this news is leaked, those long ears will absolutely not let him off. Moreover, those greedy, filthy, and stupid beast bandits of the Beastman Empire will absolutely not let go of such a fat sheep." Artis said meaningfully, "We can hide on the side and observe the situation. If he wins by then, we can retreat in time. If he and those guys are mutually injured, we can just kill our way out from the side and annihilate them in one fell swoop. A great wizard's wealth is absolutely comparable to a country." Gerald's eyes flashed with malevolence, his gaze flickered a few times, and he gritted his teeth. "Let's do it. He actually dares to fight with me over women, I must kill him. After killing him, that pair of mother and daughter elves will be mine." Ardes replied straightforwardly, "All right." The two looked at each other and revealed a smile. They clinked their cups and downed it in one gulp. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.